And a warm welcome to you, fellow adventurers. Thank you for taking some of your precious time out and sitting down to this little video. It's going to be around the same 15 to 20 minute format, I hope, like the rest. This will be dealing with heroes, monsters, and a few items of equipment that you take down into a dungeon. After this video, there'll be one on an example of combat. And then finally, when I get around to putting together a 1 to 2 hour video, there'll be a playthrough of a couple of characters and you'll be able to see the whole dungeon experience played out in front of you. By all means, you may skip all these videos and go straight to a playthrough. But for myself, when it comes to the playthrough, it would be nice to not really talk about the dice mechanics, but just play the game in front of you. And by then, if you've caught these videos every now and then, building up, you'll be able to enjoy that experience as well. So let me introduce you to a barbarian character. In this game, we've kept away from all kinds of pens and pencils and A4 sheets of paperwork. We wanted it to be card-based, quite contained, and when it comes to setting up a game, wherever you are taking it, it is quite easy. So in front of us right now, you're looking around at this card and you can see it is the barbarian. Heroes are rated from levels 1 to 6, so you start off at level 1 and hopefully end up as a great hero at level 6. Because of the mechanics you're about to see, you can start playing this game at any level you wish, to be honest. There's no reason why you can play a 6th level character fighting a dragon straight away. The choice and the game, of course, is yours. So in front of us, we can see it's a level 1 barbarian, and these are the polyhedral die stats. As you can see, we have how he fights, his health and toughness and physical side, how he moves with agility, his perception, which is a combination of his awareness, his fine finger skills, his overall gut sense, his bravery, and his wisdom. And as you can see, this barbarian with a wisdom of D4 is kind of more like a Fudge the Barbarian from the old days of White Dwarf. And we can guess already that he can take 3 wounds before he's on the floor. And he's classed as an adventurer. So what happens with this is once you've gained 10 experience points, you automatically, at that very moment, upgrade your character. And you know what's going to happen next. You flip the card over, and you can see that once you've had 10 experience points, your barbarian goes from a fighting of D8 to a D10. So that is a level 2 barbarian. This way, you can play any level in any adventure straight away, without having to go through all the stages and levels before in building up. If I drop this card on the table, you can see there is a stat change, depending if you're going to pause the screen or not, on a level 3 barbarian. He's now a warrior, 10 more experience, he's a level 4 warrior, 10 more experience, he's level 5 and classed as a hero, and then finally level 6. Let me just put those cards together again. So an actual character is only 3 cards, but with this card comes this. This is a 2-sided card. And when you play this character, this barbarian, you would have them side by side, like so. Let me pick this card up for you. Now, I'm considering, and definitely will do, some kind of player board where these 2 cards can be sunk into. I'm going to cough. Excuse me. Obviously, the player board will incorporate cards that are sleeved, and that is something that will be looked at over summer. Again, comments below on player boards, and over on the Facebook page when the time comes. But right now, this card in front of you is adjacent to the Barbarian when you play. Now, as well as the stats that you've just seen, let me pick this card up for you. There we go. You also get free tokens. These are called talent tokens, and you may have seen them when you see some of the Omen cards where it says you either roll a die or you use a token. And tokens are rated from 1 to 3. They can be upgraded as the adventure goes along. They can be downgraded as well, and new ones can be added. So, as you can see, this Barbarian would start an adventure off with 3 tokens. A Physical 1, a Fight 2, and a Bravery 3. So if we look at the Bravery now, what that means is anytime this Barbarian rolls his Bravery, which for a level 1 Barbarian is a D8, if he ever rolls a 1, 2 or 3 and fails that test, the reason for rolling Bravery, you'll be able to cash in the Bravery token and therefore get a reroll. It's the same with the Fight and the same with his Physical. And this makes all the characters just a little bit more different. And it's nice to see that characters can upgrade these talents as they go along with different abilities, and as you may have seen on the heroic action cards, you also gain as well. So when you start your adventure off, you take your level 1 card if you're starting from the beginning. Let me just get that out of the light. And then you take this card side by side. You take your tokens, a 3 token for Bravery, a 2 for Fight, Physical for 1, and we have some special rules. We have Charge In, the first fight round, if not ambushed, +1 DL, which is dice level, to fight and damage rolls. This is your hero charging in always the first sight of danger. The DL dice level would mean this D8 of this level 1 character would become a D10 while charging into a room or down a corridor when facing an enemy for the very first round only. Also, the weapon he's using is going to have a little bit more power behind it and therefore a little bit more damage. And that'll be for the first fight round only. Also, being barbarians and how they are, love to get my hands bloody. This means that range combat is always with a D6. So if someone was to give a bow to this barbarian, his fighting would drop to a D6. And I think that reflects quite well with most of the films from the 80s upwards, really, of how a typical loinclothed barbarian, or chainmail bikini barbarian, if you're into your Red Sonja, would be. At the bottom of the card, you three symbols. On the left, you see a bit of a snowy mountain. In the middle, you have a small hut or building. And on the far right, you may have seen that before on some of my Omen cards, is a cave. And what this means is the barbarian gets a +1 when any sort of encounters outside, which is representation of the wilderness and the mountains. He's -1 in settlements, which is more about talking and just meeting people in general. People are a bit scared of a barbarian, to be honest. And a 0 means he's just fine in a cave. And this adds a little bit more flavour and defines characters in the game. Now let's flip this card over. And on here we see sword and dagger for gold. So your character, this barbarian, would start with the sword and dagger card, and he has 4 gold to buy other materials. On this side of the card, there is a couple of extra rules which won't actually happen in the dungeon itself, more like at the very end, or as you move on into the wilderness and the settlement phase. And at the very bottom, those 3 symbols, images, stats are the same at the front, just to stop you turning the card over when you're coming out of the dungeon. So we have courageous. If fleeing, lose an extra +1 experience point. All this says is during a dungeon adventure, if the party tends to flee, or this particular barbarian, he will lose an extra experience point. As you know, barbarians don't really flee unless they have to, and therefore he doesn't really want to lose the experience. And finally, light on one's feet. At the start of the adventure, if wearing no armour, gain a +1 agility token. If you remember, we have those tokens already. And gain a +1 experience at the end of the dungeon. What this is saying is if you play the true role of a barbarian and just go down with your oiled muscles, very much like the first film of the Conan series, then you'll be rewarded with an agility token and a bit more experience at the end. Of course, you could wear chainmail armour. You would lose this ability though, and this gain. So, you go into a dungeon, dungeon ends, there's a few extra rules when you're travelling. And that's that, really. And put these cards to one side. I won't show any other characters right now. Let's just go on to a couple of creatures, shall we? I hope that for the barbarian was good enough for you. If not, comments below. I can always do another video with a knight. Quick look at the monster cards now for your own time. We've got the orcs. This is the back of the card, by the way. So why don't we start at the front? As you can see, the front of the card is a little different from your hero, but it's the same stats. We can see that orcs have a fighting of a d6, physical of a d8, agility of a d6, bravery of a d8. When they hit, they would roll a d8, which is the same level as a sword or an axe, so basically a common melee weapon. When you kill this orc, you roll a d6, and if you get a 5+, you gain an experience. This way, if you want to gain experience, you really want to start fighting the bigger, more dangerous monsters. Or you can go down into a sewer and start kicking around small rats, and you're really going to take a long time in leveling up. Probably get a disease before that happens. And as you can see, they have 1 health, 1 wound, and shield represents the defense when it comes to things like armor. So you don't need to add a weapon card and an armor card to this orc. It's pretty much genetically built in. So this orc will roll his physical of a d8 when it comes to resisting damage, and the lowest he can possibly roll is a 3, and that's the defense. And on the heroic actions, I do believe you saw sometimes you negate the defense. So if a heroic action says no defense, this orc would roll a d8, and if he rolls a 1 or a 2, it won't get bumped to a number 3. So there's your orc. And on the back, as you know, there's no art, so no clashes with IP, no expensive artists. And of course, orcs can be different for some people. Some are flesh and blood, and I even heard a rumour that they're made of fungus, which I prefer the classic. So anyway, so this is an orc. There is a rule here that says loot, meaning if you roll a natural 6 on a experience roll, you also get 1 gold, because they do tend to have pockets and some of the shiny. At the very bottom, we have threat level 1, because there's 3 threat levels, like 3 dungeon levels. And so they're a common lower rated monster, and there's the same experience again. We got bats, we got skeletons. Let's go with bats, shall we? As you can see, the bats are a little different. We have the common fighting of a d6, a physical of a d6, agility of a d8, which is important because when you attack with a ranged weapon, obviously they will be rolling d8 and trying to go higher than your fight roll to avoid it, because they're big flappy bats. And their bravery are a d6. If they attack you, their damage is a simple d6, and when you kill them, it's a 1 in 6 chance, which is a d6 roll for 6, in getting experience. They also have 1 health and no sort of protection, toughness, armor, which gives them any kind of shield rating. We flip this card over, as well as some simple text. It says wave 1 to 2 and fly. Wave 1 to 2 represents what happens when bats are killed. There's a chance that more will come in, hence the wave of bats. And fly is a simple thing to represent that they do not compare to the size of a room. So in a corridor where only 2 can fight 2, more bats can fight because, you know, they're flappy and flying, of course, and they avoid all kinds of restrictions like that. So that's just a couple of the monsters. I really think that design has come out quite well. So you can have a nice big bunch of monsters. And now we're coming up to the 16-minute mark, and yeah, I like to keep this 20-minute format.